Listen, ignore the fact I'm talking about social media trends here. This video isn't really about Labubus or Dubai f***ing chocolate. It's about how we got here. It's about how a generation priced out of land, homes, and even the future itself now performs status and wealth through the silliest, smallest objects on the internet. For it's not just the performance of wealth. It's the only wealth we have left. Welcome to the age of simulated luxury. Now, what exactly is simulated luxury? Current luxury consumer trends like Labubus, matcha lattes, and those fucking steel suitcases you've been psyoped into liking by TikTok. Oh, how I hate those fucking steel suitcases. How are these trends fundamentally different from any other consumer trend at any other point in history? Why is your social media feed all of a sudden filled with garbage by people pretending to be rich? For some vital context on how this fissure happened, and what that means for us as a generation, we have to go back to the beginning of modern capitalism. Just kidding, we're going back to like 1995. After being fired from a sales position at the toy manufacturer Dakin in 1986, a young entrepreneur named Ty Warner would liquidate his life savings and take out a second mortgage on his house to start his own line of toys. Toys he would obsess over for the next 7 years. After finally perfecting his product, Ty would launch his line of toys, known as Beanie Babies, at the North American International Toy Fair in New York during February of 1993. After a lukewarm launch, Ty would go back to his home city of Chicago and begin distributing the toys in small batches for $5 each, only selling to small retailers rather than big box stores like Toys R Us or Walmart. The next 2 years have proved difficult for Ty, with many retailers refusing to carry large quantities of the toys. To combat this, Ty would make his toys scarce, only allowing retailers to carry 36 of each individual Beanie Baby every month, and even retiring characters that weren't selling very well. In 1995, amongst middling sales, Ty would unexpectedly halt production of a new Beanie Baby called Peanut the Elephant, simply because he didn't like the royal blue color it was printed in, replacing it instead with a lighter blue elephant. A very, very small decision that would launch the Beanie Babies craze of the 1990s. It turns out, middle-class women in suburban Chicago were really into collecting these things. They began calling around small toy stores in Chicago, asking if they still had the original Peanut, as they were now unable to complete their collections. The suburban moms started phone trees, newsletters, all informing each other on where to get a royal blue Peanut, often spending hundreds of dollars just to get their hands on one. Ty's neurotic redesigning and perfectionist tendencies had inadvertently created a scarcity market for Beanie Babies, and grassroots hype around the product long before social media.
Lines there. We found them waiting at a store for them to open up so they could buy the newest ones.
I think we're stupid to stand in line to get a bag of beans.
You'll admit that?
I admit it.
Later that year, Ty would launch Ty.com, the very first direct-to-consumer website for a toy company. He would use this avenue to announce new product launches, what products would be retired, all fueling the frenzy around a toy that people now saw as a speculative investment, often lining up to buy 50 at a time, hoping they could flip them after they've been retired for thousands of dollars. By 1997, Beanie Babies accounted for 10% of all sales on eBay. Ty would collaborate with McDonald's to release Teeny Beanies as a Happy Meal toy.
Now at McDonald's, your kids can get teeny Beanie Babies and a Happy Meal. Real Ty Beanie Babies in a mini size.
McDonald's would sell 100 million Teeny Beanies in 9 days, which depleted the stock for a campaign that was supposed to last 5 weeks. Sorry, just sit with that for a second. McDonald's sold 100 million Happy Meals in 9 days to suburban moms who were buying them primarily for the toy inside. So much so that they were averaging 4 Happy Meals per transaction.
In New York, people were paying for Happy Meals, but telling McDonald's to keep the food. They just wanted the beanie. McDonald's remains upbeat even as its customers lose patience.
By 1998, a USA Weekend poll estimated that 64% of American households had at least one Beanie Baby in it. And by 1999, Ty Warner would net a personal income of $662 million, more than Mattel and Hasbro as companies combined. Driven by collectors and middle-class anxiety, Beanie Babies would rival Tulip Mania as the proverbial consumer craze. But like every consumer craze, it all came crashing down. In late 1999, Ty Warner would announce via Ty.com that he would halt production of all Beanie Babies on December 31st, 1999.
Because Ty, the maker of all things Beanie, announced on its website Tuesday afternoon that all Beanie Babies in distribution right now will be retired at 11:59 p.m. December 31st.
During this time, people panic bought tens of millions of Beanie Babies, thinking they would all be out of print soon, hoping to flip them for a profit. But lo and behold, January 2000 rolled around, and Beanie Babies were still being made. Due to massive oversupply, which totaled 1 billion Beanie Babies sold by the year 2000, coupled with a loss of consumer confidence, the secondary market for Beanie Babies crashed practically overnight. Collectors liquidated their entire collections, and the market was now flooded with valueless sacks of polyester. And to this day, in the year of our Lord 2025, Beanie Babies still all have dedicated sections at flea markets and thrift stores. The Beanie Baby phenomenon has been written about ad nauseum as yet another example of consumer craze and market collapse. An event not at all unique or novel. This process has happened with Hot Wheels, Pogs, Furbies, Webkins, Magic Cards, Pokemon cards, and basically any collectible with a low entry price and high secondary market. So why am I talking about them? I'm talking about them because Beanie Babies provide key insights to understand the consumer fads of the 2020s. Not because they're similar, but because they're distinctly different. You see, Beanie Babies were a lower and middle class event. The hype was driven by middle class anxiety and suburban moms who were all speculating on what $5 bag of plastic they could flip to pay off their car or their kids' tuition. It wasn't celebrities in Bentleys waiting in line at McDonald's to buy 10 Happy Meals just so they could throw the food out and collect the toy. It was regular people hoping to make some extra money. Hence, what separates present consumer fads from those of the past is the function of the object. Unlike Beanie Babies, the value of something like Labubu doesn't come from its resale potential. Labubu owners don't lock their toys away in plastic cases and get them graded for imperfections. They wear them. They post pictures with them. They take part in and emulate a small sliver of luxury culture, just like their favorite celebrities on social media. It's about identity and social signaling. Some K-pop singer was photographed with one last April on Instagram, and now the website has been sold out for months. And even though Labubus will come and go, like every other previous consumer fad, they are still fundamentally different. They have a veneer of status, a different form of value from previous consumer trends. They exist in a new realm that fundamentally changes our understanding of consumer behavior. A new phenomenon called aspirational luxury. What's up, crackers, honkies, foids, and moids? I turn down sponsorships constantly. Here's everything you're seeing on screen right now are sponsorship offers I have turned down. These are all AI slop companies. One of them transcribes documents. I think one of them sucks your cock. One of them blows smoke up your ass. I don't give a fuck. I don't read them. I'm not taking them. I would take a company. If a good company would approach me and give me money to promote a good product, I would take the money, but that is yet to happen. So if you want to support me, you can go to patreon.com/artchat. I have a media club, I have a private Discord, your name in the credits, private content on my Patreon, $5 a month. It's how I eat, it's how I run this whole channel, basically. If you can support me there, please, God bless your soul. I love you. A study from Carnegie Mellon University defines aspirational luxury as purchases made for a future self that the consumer has yet to, but is aspiring to, become. From a marketing analytics perspective, aspirational luxury consumers, or ALCs, are individuals who spend between $3,200 and $10,600 annually on luxury goods. More than the average consumer, but below the truly affluent. These people are often labeled Henrys, high earners, not rich yet. According to a recent McKinsey study, ALCs make up to 18% of global luxury buyers, yet they drive 50% of total luxury market revenue. This cohort is highly diverse, but the largest segment is what McKinsey calls status seekers, under 35, focused on high visibility, logo-driven purchases, and following trends fueled by social media. Status seekers represent nearly 40% of all aspirational luxury consumers, meaning that young consumers motivated by status now account for around 20% of luxury industry sales. Many in this demographic stretch their budgets for luxury items, prioritizing first and foremost the appearance of affluence, and most of the time at the expense of long-term financial security. Now, keep all of this in mind, because it's time to talk about status. The author, W. David Marks, no relation, claims that status is the ultimate social taboo. Greater than sex, greater than discussing income, greater than making fun of a man because he's short. We are always participating in status games with each other, no matter the context. Status games aren't exclusive to making more money or being more attractive. They are contingent on what quantifies status in your in-group. For example, your in-group could be the philosophy department of your university. Your status in that group may not be predicated on income or beauty, but it may be something like how many books you've read, how long you've been studying that week, how many continental philosophers can you name drop in a single sentence. In contrast, your in-group might be billionaires, and your status in that group is contingent on how big your boat is, where you vacation, and what model you're fucking that week. W. David Marks claims that because status games are always being played no matter the context, that status-seeking behavior is actually the primary driver of cultural production. The drive for status is the thing that creates culture as people try to one-up each other in a given status game. For example, we could look at thrifting culture. Thrifting culture at its peak was bent on curating and collecting the tackiest and most out-of-date outfits. Most notably, the dad shoe. This newfound obsession with thrifted New Balances and Nike Monarchs then informed high fashion, prompting luxury brands like Balenciaga to create the Runner and the Triple S, or brands like Yeezy to create the Wave Runner. Thrash metal one-upmanship in the 80s was all predicated on who could go heavier, spawning bands like Slayer and Sodom, bands that still influence to this day. You could find thousands of examples on how in-group status games have created culture, and please comment them below because I fucking love this shit. But I would go as far to say that Marx is objectively correct. Status seeking is the primary driver of cultural production. If we combine his thesis with our concept of aspirational luxury, we can start to understand the modus operandi of 2020's consumer culture. But to understand why it's a distinctly new phenomenon, we're missing a key piece. You see, my sweet viewer, so mature for his or her age, I've failed to mention a simple fact: that everything is downstream from economics. I've spoken about this a lot on my channel. One could say it's basically what the channel's about at this point. But young people have been priced out of many basic life milestones that were a given for previous generations. For example, we face record-high average mortgage payments of $2,800 per month, a 177% rise in tuition since 1970 adjusted for inflation, a 220% increase in childcare over the last 30 years, again adjusted for inflation, and the normalization of debt, with Gen Z having more debt and credit card usage than any other generation at the same age. And all of this, while the real hourly median wage has only risen by like 10% since 1970. When I rattle off stats like these, and there are many, people often refute my claims of despair with the simple fact that we still exist in material prosperity. We're not going hungry, we have shelter, we don't work too much, we have a decent amount of free time, we can consume, things are generally fine. And to that, I would say yes, I agree with you. Things are generally fine. But what does that mean for a culture that's been priced out of its own future? What are the spiritual consequences for almost half of people under 35 believing they will never own a home, when almost 30% either don't want or genuinely believe they will never be able to afford a family? What is the point of fucking material prosperity if we have no future? This is the undeniable meaning crisis of millennials and Gen Z. We live a life of no milestones or mountains, no struggles or goals, just a slog of spiritual stagnation from cradle to grave. The West has fucked up spiritually so bad that 20-year-olds are converting to Islam for fun. This lack of future has created what marketing strategist Eugene Healy calls little treat culture. With a normalization of debt and young people no longer saving for things like homes and babies, we inadvertently have more disposable income. Living paycheck to paycheck doesn't really matter when you're not going to do anything important with your money anyways. This increase in disposable income has created a shift into new signifiers of wealth and luxury. Things as small as a $9 croissant, a matcha latte, a Labubu keychain, or things as big as a Crusette pot set, a Smeg toaster, or those fucking steel suitcases. Oh god, how I hate those steel suitcases. Almost all product categories now have an aspirational luxury version of themselves. And these objects are the new signifiers of wealth. You may not have land, a house, a family, or a car, but you have the same luxury consumer garbage that people with actual wealth have, in the sense that status seeking drives cultural production. Aspirational luxury objects in lieu of tangible wealth and equity are now the dominant form of consumption. These are the objects we post on social media, the objects we decorate our basement studio apartments with, a performance of luxury and a simulation of wealth in a generation that has lost access to its own future. So, what happens in a culture when all wealth is simulated? Decades ago, the French philosopher Jean Baudrillard warned us the simulation would become more real than reality itself. In his 1981 book Simulacra and Simulation, Baudrillard describes how modern society is dominated by images, symbols, and signs, to the extent that our experience of reality is simulated through our interactions with these signs rather than with reality itself. He refers to these signs and symbols as simulacra, which literally just means a copy of a copy. In a media-dominant culture, a sign slowly becomes untethered from reality as it is copied again and again, passing through 4 distinct stages before it becomes what he calls a pure simulacra. So what the fuck does that mean? Well, let me give you an example. We can imagine a first-order simulacra as a vintage photograph of a cowboy from the 1890s. This is a photograph of a real person, a faithful copy of reality itself. But what if we abstracted just a bit from reality? We can imagine the second stage of simulation as a classic Western movie from the 1950s. Media has taken the idea of the cowboy, real people that existed in a real context, and narrativized it. The cowboys in the movie are not real cowboys. The stories in the movies are not true stories, but it is an abstraction of a symbol that was once real. This second stage is an unfaithful copy. Now the third stage would be something like Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained, a contemporary movie, but a movie that's in direct conversation with classic 1950s westerns. In the third stage, you not only have an abstraction of reality, but an absence of reality. A copy with no original. A reference to a reference to a reference. The fourth and final stage is pure simulacra. This would be something like a Django Unchained Halloween costume. A sign that bears no relation to the original reality of the cowboy, but only to other signs. Baudrillard would call this world of signs hyperreality, when the simulation or sign completely replaces the real world. Now, we have pure simulacras, copies with no originals, and hyperreality, a world made of pure simulacras. Let's take these ideas and apply them to how we think about wealth and status. In the first stage, wealth would be contingent on land. You can farm on it, you can flip it, you can build an empire on it, but that all requires the ownership of physical space. The second stage would be like owning a house in a suburban neighborhood. You own the house, which is on land, but because of the HOA, you can't build whatever you want on that land. You couldn't start a factory or an opium farm, but you do own the house, which is an abstraction of the purpose of land ownership, an unfaithful copy. The third stage would be a condo. Now you have no land, just property. It's like owning a house that's floating in space. You can't tear down the walls, you can't remodel the bathroom, but you can fill it with consumer goods. The wealth of condo ownership is in reference to the wealth of home ownership, which is built upon the wealth of land ownership. A copy of a copy. The fourth and final stage, the pure simulacra of wealth, would be just the consumer goods in a rental unit. You own nothing concrete, no land, no lasting property, no equity, but possess the signs of affluence, floating free of any foundation. This is pure simulation. Wealth measured in transient, highly visible goods, rather than any material stake or productive asset. We now exist in the hyperreality of wealth. A hyper-real simulation of affluence in response to economic exclusion. We seek status and create culture through aspirational luxury, buying things for the version of yourself you see in the future, but a future that will never come. It's what separates all of this from previous consumer trends and makes them fundamentally different. We are inside a simulation that is manufacturing new forms of aspiration, new symbols we can name ourselves to and identify with. It's Labubu's. It's a $20 smoothie. It's a Von Dutch hat. Whether you like it or not, this is the culture we exist within. The car is on fire, and there is no driver at the wheel. We may be in a recursive cultural simulation the likes of which no other point in history has ever even comprehended before. But at least we're all here together. Thank you for watching. Never kill yourself.